Dan Wilson team, and thank you so much for coming up here to support. I think all of you have already heard my spiel. I don't need to restate my background unless anybody's really dying for it. Since we have a small group here, let's just have conversations. Let's talk about things that are important with you guys, questions you may have, and let's attack it that way. So, who has a question that you might want to ask me and see what my response might be or position? Sir?
You do know the sheriff is a compensation law in this county. They're above the state, federal law. Did you know?
I do. Yeah. I'm actually endorsed by
I figured you did.
Sheriff Richard Mack of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. He came to Coeur d'Alene in April and publicly endorsed me as the only constitutional sheriff candidate in the race for Kootenai County Sheriff 2024.
Good to know.
Bill.
There's been some news about the guy in the restaurant who was had a warrant out for him from the FBI, and had you been sheriff, what would have been your tax for that? For J6?
The very first thing that I would have done is I would have requested publicly anybody that was involved with J6 to come and meet with me immediately, because I want to know who those individuals are in my county. If I know who they are, then we can put an action plan together, because action beats reaction every single time. And as we have the discussion, I would start asking, have you been formally charged yet? Have you been contacted? And I'd start accumulating my list. I would also be informing the FBI and whatever other federal agencies are working inside Kootenai County. You will not do anything in this county without running it through me first. I am the chief law enforcement officer of the county, and you guys must check in with me on anything that you do. I would also ask the question, did Washington, D.C., where this crime apparently occurred, enter into an extradition agreement with the state of Idaho? A lot of people miss this little fact. Washington, D.C. is not the state, it's its own separate sovereignty. And in order for us to expedite between the states, we have to have, and Steve, maybe if you need to correct me, but you have a little more experience in this, but the way I understand it is that you cannot expedite somebody without an agreement through the state via interstate. So I want to find out, first of all, has the FBI done all its homework, or are they just doing what they have been known to do, which is run roughshod over everybody in the pursuit of their so-called 2 tiers of justice? And then lastly, I would want to read what the warrant says. I want to read what the charging documents are prior to allowing them to come in contact with my citizen. I think that we need to be discussing, since the liberals, and let's have a discussion about this. And do you guys agree that everybody's playing by the same constitutional laws established by the founders 250 years ago? Do you believe that that's happening today? Do you believe that there is equal protection under the law for everybody, regardless of where you are? So we know that the federal government and the state government many times do not play by the same rules that we the citizens have to play by. And I believe that it's important for us to start taking the fight back to these individuals. And we saw in the mid-2013, 14, 15, we saw sanctuary cities popping up all over the coast. I remember that Spokane was one of those cities. And I say that there was no repercussions for these cities openly violating the law. So I think that we start taking these tactics back that they play by, and we do them ourselves. We declare Kootenai County a January 6th sanctuary county. Now, how that works, again, I don't have the exact details, but I'm seeing nothing being done, and we know that these persecutions have been taking place since early 2021. And in this county, which should be the most conservative county, liberty without compromise county in the entire country, has done nothing publicly to discuss this very event that took place and what it should look like under equal protection due process. And And I would argue and say that because we have confirmation under the Patriot Act, which has been applied to many of these J6 defendants who have been deprived of their due process, held indefinitely, no bond, no attorneys, no official charges. It all comes back down to the Federalist Papers when they had the argument originally as to why we should or should not adopt the Constitution. And Hamilton and Madison and Jay frequently argued that we don't want a centralized government, that we need to have two governments equally sovereign, equally accountable to each other, but separate, to keep each other in check as to what the other one is doing. And yes, we have this overarching Constitution that we all live by, and more specifically, the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights hits us individually every single day. And it's those Bill of Rights that every state has to work under. We have to protect people's rights at the state level. But when we see that the federal government is not doing that, then the states must do what it can in order to protect the individual's rights. And I think that we've seen a clear delineation of where the federal government has been weaponized against we the people. And it's not in just California or Nevada or Washington or Missouri or wherever. It happens in all 50 states, and we saw it right here close in Kootenai County. So it's time for us to take the fight back and start using their tactics to go after them, and we'll let the courts decide. If we have a president of the United States that can, in defiance of the Supreme Court, say, screw you guys, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing, then we do it too. We wrap them up in the same lawfare that they're doing to us. We take those tactics to them and apply the same rules that they're applying to us. I do not understand why Republicans today will consistently pass up every good opportunity to make a difference because they can, but they refuse not to because they say we have to play by the rules. If we play the game of Monopoly together, and we play by the house rules, we all have an equal chance of winning the game, right? But if you play by your set of rules and I play by the house rules, who's going to win that game? The guy that makes up the rules. So anyway, that's how I would handle the J6 situation. And we don't know what happened. We have no idea whether the FBI came and put him into custody at his house. We don't know if they used SWAT agents, which they've been doing quite a bit. The two Athol police officers that I contacted have no knowledge of the event, which means they most likely didn't notify the chief of police in Athol, but unsubstantiated. So we don't know what's going on with this guy, but there's one last thing that I'll say about this. The FBI should not be making any arrests right now while the Supreme Court is getting ready to rule on the Fisher versus U.S. case. And in brief, what that is it is a definition of obstruction. A lot of people, the grandmothers and peaceful people that were walking and ended up trespassing onto the Capitol grounds and inside the Capitol, have been charged with obstruction of commerce. And there's a challenge right now where they're waiting to find out what the Supreme Court truly considers the word obstruction. And if they rule in favor of we the people, you're going to see a lot of people released from prison. You're going to see charges dropped. So the FBI should not be in Kootenai County going after anybody knowing that we are days away from this ruling by the Supreme Court. And it is what it is. It is lawfare and intimidation against all of you as you step out of line and proclaim your First Amendment rights to peacefully protest. And I will argue and say that they do not truly care about your so-called rioting the way that we would think. Because we watched them in 2020 burn down complete cities. We watched them assault people and destroy people's lives, and nobody was held accountable. Charges were dropped on many of those terrorists, and I'll call them terrorists because they were terrorists in our very own country. So if they were truly concerned about rioting and or disruption or what they call non-peaceful assembly, then they would equally go after with every bit the same amount of resources as they are with the J6ers that they would to those people that burn and live in the city. So, other questions?
Can we just talk about the?
Yeah, the echo is like kind of bouncing back at you. I think we can hear you just fine without the.
You want me to try this?
Yeah, you can drop that.
I mean, it's up to you, but just.
We'll try it for a minute here.
Yeah, it's a pretty good echo chamber inside here.
You gotta love these old ranges, right? Got a lot of character to it. They were designed for bar dancing.
That's right.
I'm so it's this one now. Oh, you need it for your live stream. Can I keep it on? Okay, I got
Actually, the echo is just as bad without that,
Yeah.
so it doesn't make.
It's the same. It's the same.
Why not come in a little bit closer? How's that? That work a little better? Welcome. Thanks for coming. I think we can just turn that all the way down. All right. So what other questions do you guys have? Quincy, are you good on volume?
I'm good.
Sir?
Do we have emergency plans? Because things are going to break down in the cities. And obviously, we're going to head this way for food and so forth. What I just recently, there was 500,000 acres of water of Idaho taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Plutonium or something like that.
Cobalt?
Yeah.
That's the allegation anyway.
I understand. You talk about going to the courts for things. The courts have followed up with everything, as it was everything. Everything's in reverse. They've done a real good job of causing chaos. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
I'm here. If I go volunteer for that too.
Yeah, so the question is, what are we doing to have a plan for the county? And I think that where I'm understanding you is you wonder whether or not we have a group that has gathered together to be ready for what it says. So I saw 4 years ago nothing being done despite the summer chaos, the attempted end run around the Constitution via, 15 days stop the spread. And we knew that once Biden was installed, because I do not believe that he was legitimately elected president of the United States. We knew that the border was going to be wide open. We knew all of the attempts that somewhat failed during COVID, the attempt to take away your rights to life, liberty, and property. They're going to do it again. And in 4 years, Sheriff Bob Norris has done nothing to secure this county against the next enemy. Do any of you believe that he has? There should have been a citizens posse that was formed. The sheriff has the constitutional authority and the state authority to gather around him all able individuals that want to volunteer in order to help secure the county. A lot of people think that means we're going to put badges on everybody, slap rifles and guns, and have them go out and be deputies, and that's not the case. What it is it's exactly what you were alluding to. It's a team of individuals throughout the county that have a multitude of experience. Engineering, electricians, carpenters, equipment operators, specialists in communications, food storage. Anytime there's a man-made or natural event that takes place, we have to assume that the federal government's not coming. Ask the people in Hawaii how that worked out. The state government most likely is not going to deploy. We have to figure that nobody's coming, it's up to us. Everything starts at the community level. We have forgotten this basic principle from 250 years ago, that the people in this county are every bit, if not more important, than anything at the federal level.
I have a question. Are there other communities around the nation that are doing this well, and would you model after them?
Some of the models that I've already taken into account is Sheriff Mark Lamb out of Pinal County, Arizona, who does have a citizens posse.
Okay.
So there are citizens posses throughout the entire western United States. Sheriff is in Klickitat, I can't think of his name right now, it escapes me. Klickitat County in Washington has a very robust reserve program. And And I've been in discussions with other sheriff candidates from southern Idaho that are looking to do the exact same thing.
Good to see you.
What would you do if the FDA or USDA came in and sort of shut down family farms and ranches in the county?
Yeah, they'd be told to hit the road. We're not gonna allow them to cut off our food supply here. We have our own right. I don't care what the FDA, USDA, any of them have to say about the issue. We have every bit right to produce good food in our own communities and be the decider. So I say that they start molesting any of our people, there's going to be a response. They're going to be told, you continue to do it, you're going to get arrested. I mean, I'm done playing softball with these guys, these thugs. If these thugs can continually come into our own counties, like, here, let me give you an example. Most of the problems right now are federal law enforcement, federal regulation entities, right? You guys heard about the whistleblower nurse out of Texas? It was talking about a hospital that was illegally still administering puberty blocking drugs to children. That happened in the state of Texas here just recently. And the FBI came out to harass that nurse. I'm here to tell you that if we keep playing the game that we're playing right now, which is to let these bullies do things under the color of law, without the local sheriff and the state police saying, do not even think about affecting this, there will be a response. We will arrest every one of you that's associated with the attempt to harass our people and prosecute you under the full extent of the law. But we saw it with the recent prosecution and persecution of Trump, that they're creating a lot of really creative things in order to persecute and prosecute a former sitting president, right? So, where are our local DAs, prosecuting attorneys, state attorney generals? Why are they not going after Democrats doing the same thing, or other law enforcement agencies? We need to start exerting our authority to keep the federal government in check by making certain our people's rights to life, liberty, and property remains, period. So, great question. Jen?
Did you list four bullet points of how you differ from Morris for communities?
Number one, I was from this region originally. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, right? So I understand this region. I have nothing against people that have moved here to this great area, but it's important that people know that I know this region and the culture here. And everybody that moved to this area moved here because of the great culture we have, right? So how do you maintain that culture if you have a lot of people moving in that forget that history? So I have deep roots here. I understand local. I understand the people that are moving into this great county because of their political persecution. Number two, I'm a constitutional guy. I've studied the Constitution my entire life. If you have a sheriff, he is supposed to be your last line of defense against an out-of-control, unaccountable federal and state government. So if you are going to step in the gap, how do you do it and protect people's rights to life, liberty, and property if you don't fully understand the intent of the founders and the framers of the Constitution and the history of this country? If you talk to Bob Norris right now, he cannot speak to the Federalists. He can't tell you the history of our country. He's failed to do it. I've listened to him speak for almost 3 years, and he will never say anything of any kind of depth. But how can you protect people's rights if you don't understand the arguments when the founders were urging the states to ratify the Constitution? And we have a great history in this country going all the way back to the Mayflower, John Carver, when they signed the Mayflower Compact. The fact that people were coming to America to escape persecution, and then everything that led up from the splitting from England to becoming the Americans that we are now. You cannot protect somebody's rights to life, liberty, and property if you don't really understand the hard work and the thought that the founders put into those documents. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is nothing more than a paper parchment. It's a parchment barrier. It's only strong because a good, moral, righteous people uphold those words. I'm also a businessman, so I've had 12 years of law enforcement experience at the ground level. I understand the culture of law enforcement. I love it. It's a passion of mine. But I've also operated 2 commercial construction companies for 25 years, and I have business sense. If you've been in business for 25 years, you have to have done something right. And the sheriff's office right now does not have anybody with a business mind coming in to determine if the office is really being run effectively and efficiently. And I'm going to request from the county commissioners money to have a complete forensic audit of the sheriff's office top to bottom, which has never been done. And a forensic audit, any of you in here are accountants?
Sort of.
So-
I've been part of a team.
Okay. So do you understand what the difference is between a forensic audit versus a regular audit?
A forensic audit goes way deeper.
It's way deeper and it's admissible in court. So, in the course of our audit, if we find things that are illegal, they will be investigated. But we need to find out where the dollars are being spent, if they're being spent judiciously, correctly, or whether or not we have waste. I'm sick and tired as a taxpayer being constantly told the solution to all the problems is more money. In fact, I think the county commissioners are already talking about a 1 to 3% increase in taxes, on property taxes. You guys happy with that? Not me. So how in the world can we go from a $46 million budget last year to a $50 million budget this year that was presented before the Board of County Commissioners by Sheriff Norris's undersheriff and Chief Budget Officer? It's a lot of money. We're down 19 patrol deputies. Overall, in the sheriff's office, we're down almost 30 personnel. But we're being told the way we fix something is we need more money. And if you want to be safe, you need to vote to increase taxes because your safety is at risk if you don't buy off on helping us get another 2 to 3% tax. So we need to find out also how much civil asset forfeiture money. I'm not a fan. I think civil asset forfeiture is a violation of the law. Does anybody else disagree with me? You should not have your property taken away until you are completely convicted in a court of law, and then your property under law can be liquidated. But we rely too much for that revenue stream to help us over the finish line on pet projects. Like, for example, $100,000 of civil asset forfeiture money was recently used, approved by the Board of County Commissioners in 2023, to equip a helicopter that the county does not own, that is operated by a volunteer corporation, nonprofit corporation, 501c3, called Kootenai Regional Air Support Unit. It was used to equip this helicopter that we don't own with a spotlight, forward-looking infrared, police radios, and other accessories. Is that a good use of our tax dollars? How many federal grants are we getting right now at the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office? And out of those grants, federal grants more specifically, how many of them come with strings attached? My belief is the Sheriff's Office should be 100% independent. I do not want to receive a $1 million grant to buy my deputies more body armor or newer clocks if it comes with a string attached. And I'm curious, why are we giving so much money to the federal government and then waiting for them to give it back? Does that work in your own life? Is there anybody here that gives a portion of their money to another entity and then they get a bigger bulk back? The other thing that I believe passionately about is a deputy reserve program. And a deputy reserve program is similar to what I did for 12 years. You are a volunteer police officer with those same credentials as a full-time, full authority deputy or police officer does. Same arrest power, same responsibilities, liability, but you do it at no cost to your community because you want to give back to your community. I gave back to my community for 12 years. I strapped on my Kevlar vest, put on my uniform, put my gun on, put my badge, and I patrolled the streets. I did typical patrolman work. but I did about, in 12 years, $250,000 worth of volunteer service to my community. This area is known for being a law enforcement retirement community. And the Idaho State Post, which is the Peace Officers and Standards and Training Commission that certifies police officers and deputies in the state of Idaho, has a provision that allows any recent law enforcement officer that has separated from their other agency within the past 3 years does not have to be recertified through the post. So all you have to do is you have to come in, fill out the typical application, go through the background checks, the polygraphs, the sites, everything that a full-time officer would have to do if they're applying for a law enforcement agency. And once that comes back clear, you don't have to send those volunteers to an academy out of the area, and they can instantly start helping perform law enforcement duties here in the county. Spokane City, the city of Spokane, where I worked as a reserve officer, published their annual report on their volunteer services. And in 2023, the city of Spokane received over $800,000 worth of volunteer service by their reserve officers. So rather than raising taxes in the county to secure more deputies to try to pay them a living wage similar to the bigger city of Spokane County next door, we bring in guys that say, and women that say, hey, you know what, we love this community, we want to still help, we have the skills, we don't have to bring in brand new recruits. You already have guys and men and women that have a lot of experience, decades of experience on the road, and it's a win-win for the county.
Why do you think that hasn't happened yet?
I could theorize. One is it's a pain to run those volunteer groups if you don't have somebody that's dedicated that wants to be ahead of your volunteer services. Number two, it takes a little bit of money to do that. You know, you have to get things lined out because your reserve deputies will have to maintain the same certifications, and there's uniforms and other equipment that has to be distributed. Also, you can get blowback from Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm not saying that that has happened, but when I was in Spokane, the city of Spokane, and Liberty Lake, we worked specifically for the chief of police. And because we were directly working for the chief, especially in the city of Spokane, the union, the police union, didn't like it because they felt we were taking jobs away. And there was a little bit of hostility because certain officers, it ticks them off if you get a guy that comes in and does it occasionally and can work at a proficient level, but you only do it part-time, because some of these deputies and officers, this is their life. It'd be similar to me, I'm in construction, you know. You don't want some guy coming in occasionally once a month and being a master craftsman and producing something. It makes you kind of look bad if you're doing that full time. It's kind of a bad parallel. So that could be some of the reasons. I just think that a lot of times it's a big hassle in the beginning, but ultimately the dividends are exponential.
So do you foresee, someone overseeing that program, do you foresee that being a paid position?
Oh, absolutely. Be part of the command staff. Absolutely. It'd be under one of the captains and lieutenants. Are you have a background in law enforcement as well?
I used to work for Washington County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
But in an administrative role.
Yeah. So did you guys have a reserve program?
Yes.
How did it work for you?
It seemed to work quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was many years ago, but yeah.
So there's been a little bit of a philosophical change. One of the reasons is also liability. Understand that every agency today, whether it's a state municipality or if it's a county, they don't look at their people anymore as people. They look at them as numbers and liability. So if you look like it may cost the county something, then you have your risk management that says, you know, this is much too risky for us. And I say, I'm done with this. I'm done with the same old politics. And what are we fed over and over again? This could happen. This might happen. But we have examples day in and day out across the entire country of law enforcement officers doing bad things. Not to say that all law enforcement is bad. That's not what I'm saying. But there are mistakes that happen. And they cost cities and counties a lot of money. Ozzie Knezevich, sheriff in Spokane County, costed taxpayers over $12 million in his 12 plus years in office over wrongful terminations. So, you know, we have to get back to a local society that says we are willing to take on the risks. The bean counters don't know it all. And we have to believe in our people over embarrassment or exposure. But we also have to raise those limits too, of the expectations of the culture of our law enforcement. Sir?
Hi, Dan. I got a question. I just wondering what your theory is about the broken window theory. One thing we're having a problem, I talked to the undersheriff and got into a heated argument with him.
Yeah.
But we're getting heavy-handed, I think, out here in Athol. They're hiding out of the dumps, they're hiding out behind buildings, they're hiding out in people's driveways, and they backed off. Now they're starting to do it again. They were one time up at the border tower here with binoculars spying on the whole community here. So we're starting to get this again. And I was just wondering what your feeling is about all that.
When you say again,
So they were doing it, and then all of a sudden they stopped after I had a little talk with the undersheriff, and all of a sudden now I see it's happening again.
So it was in 2022.
so, okay, good timeline. So the broken window theory comes back to community-oriented policing. And it was something that came in the Clinton years where they flooded local communities with a lot of federal dollars. And the idea is that if you start taking care of the small little crimes that take place, like you see a broken window, you go and investigate, you start building a safer community by, at a micro level, managing the crime that's happening and then the way it expands. That's kind of rough. The organization that now promotes COPS, community-oriented policing, really is in love with federal dollars. They're not good for local communities. We don't need to follow national models. We can adopt things that we like, but from a community standpoint, here's how it should be working. You should have regularly assigned deputies in the districts, and they should be out getting to know their community. They should be in coffee houses. They should be at Superline. They should be at events. They should be getting out of their patrol car and making contact with people to develop relationships, trust, intel. I can tell you how many times that I love what I call old codgers. And when I was on patrol, these were the guys that were retired, in their 70s or 80s. And they were the best source of intel in a community because they watch everything that goes on and they can give you descriptions of vehicles and individuals. And we use that. I use that intel because I develop these friendships. I'd sometimes bring the old guy a cup of coffee and we'd sit and talk and I'd be, hey, hold on a second, their hearing aids are on and they can't hear when my radio's going off. I'm like, hold on a second, and in between, listening to chatter going on with the radio, we'd have these conversations, and they were always beneficial. And I love that one-on-one relationship with our community. But the only way you do that is by actually having a sheriff's office that is aligned with those same values, instead of chasing after the federal dollars that come in through the COPS process. We start doing what we need to be doing in our local communities. And I will have cars assigned to these districts where we'll have the same deputies working over and over again. And they're not going to be looking for reasons to hem people up. They're going to be looking for reasons to stop individuals who are trying to deprive people of life, liberty, and property.
So not hanging out in driveways, behind gas stations, in the dump, everything else then.
Yeah, now, occasionally, when I would run the report, especially at nighttime, I would hide myself back in a corner from a tactical standpoint. So always keep in mind that where you park a car isn't necessarily indicating that you're there spying somebody out.
But they're doing traffic stops and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It used to be that way here. There was a sheriff's deputy, he lived in Athol, and he was always at Country Boy and different places, and he'd come around. He was very friendly, and he did exactly that under Wolfinger.
Yeah.
But now it's more like LA or.
Yeah.
Holy Stick.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. And sorry I was late. So you may have already answered this. So when you talk to people that aren't your supporters, they say, oh, he doesn't have the experience
Yeah.
to be this.
Yeah.
So how would you answer them when they say, and they keep saying,
Yeah.
he doesn't have enough experience to be a sheriff. So how would, if you could tell us what
Sure.
to say
Yeah.
when they say these things to us?
That is an outstanding question. Thank you. First of all, I asked him, well, what do you mean? What do you mean that he doesn't have the experience? What kind of experience does he have to have?
Yeah.
Right? Because then they have to go, well, he has to know what it's like to run a big law enforcement organization. Now, do you believe that our framers, even in the Idaho state constitution, and when Idaho became a state, do you think that they were wise individuals that helped formulate our state laws? Why do you think in well over 100 plus years they've never changed the requirements to be a sheriff, which is an elected representative from among the people? There's 3 things that are required to be a sheriff in the state of Idaho. You have to be 21 years of age. You have to actually reside in the county that you want to be the sheriff in. And you have to be a citizen of the United States. People don't understand that the sheriff, as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, his first responsibility is representing the people, no different than state senators that vote on billion-dollar budgets. And the person that actually runs the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's office is the undersheriff, traditionally, or the chief deputy. Some counties, they have 2 undersheriffs. One that does all the patrol and manpower, and the other one that does the administrative side. And then you have captains, and you have lieutenants. So you come back and ask them, well, what kind of experience does he have? Well, he has no command staff experience. No, but Dan Wilson has 25 years of running 2 very successful commercial construction companies where he's had to negotiate complex federal and large corporation contracts for millions of dollars. He's had to run personnel. He's had to run subject matter experts, because in construction, it's not just anybody in here in construction? Okay, construction is not easy, right? I mean, there's some fundamentals, plumb, square, right, level. But once you start building something, you have all these tentacles, the Leviathan that comes out. And over the years, I had to become very proficient at gathering around me as a general contractor, subject matter experts in all of their fields that I don't have a complete understanding, to advise me how to successfully execute a contract. Now, I've negotiated contracts with the Department of Defense. That's how big those contracts are. With huge medical corporations, states, counties, cities. So, the sheriff is a CEO of the organization. Bob Norris does not go out and arrest people, or he shouldn't, because of his disability that he has from California. I mean, it's a true story. But that's why you have deputies. You're administering the management of the office, and you're managing 2 things. You're managing the entire office and all the personnel and everything that goes along with operating the sheriff's office. And then the most important element that you're dealing with is the people you serve. So ask yourselves, has Bob Norris truly ever had real leadership outside of a self-contained organization that has unlimited tax dollars, unlimited support of command staff, people above him, below him? Could he stand on his own and do the same thing without all of those factors? And look, the law is the law. If you work basic patrol, you understand the workings of how the sheriff's office works. And
So you were a voluntary police officer for 12 years?
I was.
Oh, okay, okay, because they're acting like you had no experience.
Well, there's an agenda behind it. And so, as a reserve police officer, what that means is I was 35 years old when I decided that I finally had the latitude. My companies were doing very well, and I had them fully staffed, and operating the day-to-day operations did not require me to be there. And I had been trying for well over a year to get accepted into either a police academy or a deputy sheriff's academy for reserves. And depending on the demand, they would solicit it, and you might go and pass a physical, and then they say, we don't have enough applicants, so they can the academy. But finally, Spokane City held their tryouts, and I did the physical agility test, I did the application, and I was accepted into police academy. Psych evals, polygraphs, extensive background parole boards, physicals, all of it. And then I had to go through a reserve academy, which is equivalent to a full-time academy, but I did that during the nights and on weekends for about 5 months, 7 days a week primarily. And then I have to take the exact same test that a full authority, full-time police officer had to take. So if you look at all the qualifications of a full authority police officer that does it 365 days a year versus a reserve, we have to be equal. Also have to maintain the exact same training status requirements every month as well. I had to maintain my EVOC, which is running a patrol car through the course of the cone course, my shooting qualifications, my constitutional law, my access for being able to look at privileged information. So I run your name on a traffic stop and it comes back and you have 3 felony misdemeanors for shoplifting for bubblegum candy. I'm going to probably pull you out of my car and put you in cuffs, but I have access to privileged information. Which, by the way, lest any of you forget, any of you know who County Commissioner Bruce Matari is?
Yeah.
So many of you may not know this, but Bruce Matari was Bob Norris's campaign manager when Bob Norris ran for sheriff before he was a county commissioner. And when Bob Norris was sworn in as sheriff, Bruce Matari was given a special deputization by Bob Norris, where he signed a non-disclosure agreement, and he has now, as a new county commissioner, access to privileged information that none of the rest of you guys have access to. Now, he's tried to deny this and say, well, he doesn't have access to the national crime databases, but he signed an NDA. And Bob Norris, on the record, on video, has said that he uses Bruce, who, again, is the only one of 3 county commissioners that has this special deputization, and he's a politician. But he uses Bruce, Bob uses Bruce for public relations, and it saves the county $35,000 a year. Is that separation of government that we want between our elected officials? Does that bother you? So I was bringing this to the public's notice earlier this year. I was making videos about this and asking questions. And the response was, Sheriff Norris in his official capacity and County Commissioner Bruce Matari decided to hold an event. They wanted to challenge me because I was accusing them of committing criminal acts. And during this event, which I did not attend, they laid out the argument that he can't possibly be accessing any databases. He doesn't access them. But if you go back to the Quarterly Press article, November 18th, 2023, Bob and Bruce talked quite extensively about the relationship and the access to information that they had. You do not want a politician having access to privileged information. Privileged information is information that is only available for official duty to law enforcement in the course of their lawful investigation. So next time you look at Bruce Matari, you may ask him, why do you have a special deputization? You're part of the 3 that approves the sheriff's budgets and has an oversight capacity of the sheriff's office. Why are you and the sheriff running around together all the time like this? And why is he sharing information with you but not the other 2 county commissioners? I call it separation of powers. They will argue and say, well, that has to do with federal and the 3 branches. We know the principle behind it, which is independent offices co-accountable to each other, but independent. And let me tell you, the sheriff's office must be above any kind of hint of impropriety. So the last thing I'll say about Bob and qualifications, one of the things that I'm hit up with all the time is you can't possibly understand how to run a $50 million budget. And I laugh. I've argued and I've said that for years, for 25 years, I've had to run my own budgets, millions of dollars, with no taxpayer dollar input. And if I mismanage those budgets, I'm out of business. How many of you are in business? Any of you in business in here? Okay. So what happens if you misalign your priorities and your budgets?
are affected,
Yeah.
jobs are gone,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
So Bob Norris has never actually ran a budget that was made up of his own dollars. He's always had the taxpayer dollars to manage. And to hone this, or drive this point home, the beginning of the month, Norris presented his fiscal year 2025 budget to the Board of County Commissioners. Donna and I attended this meeting, and when Bob Norris was introduced, Sheriff Norris was introduced to the board to present the budget, he immediately says, "Thank you, Commissioners, I'm going to defer to my undersheriff and to the Sheriff Office Chief Budgeting Officer, Stephanie." And Bob Norris sat for the rest of the time with his head in his hands as his staff, his undersheriff, Sheriff's Budgeting Officer, captains and lieutenants answered the questions of the county commissioners. So next time somebody wants to bring that up and say, no way, then you ask, why isn't Norris competent enough to actually give the presentation to the Board of County Commissioners? Dan Wilson, when I'm sitting before the Board of County Commissioners, I'll be looking everybody in the eye. I'll be presenting my budget. I will be arguing as to the validity of each line item, and I will be informing the people the areas that I've been able to identify as wasteful or not needed and the cuts that we're going to make. And people are going to be very, very unhappy when Dan Wilson gets in, because we're not going to have the big budgets. We're going to figure out a way to shrink it down to where it's more manageable and hold people accountable. Just because you come up to me and say, I've got to have this shiny new toy, why? If you want a real education, watch the budget deliberations that are taking place right now. They're all over YouTube under Kootenai County, Board of County Commissioners. Watch when employees try to convince the commissioners that their new toy or program has to be funded. They all say the exact same thing. This is a must. We have to have it. We have to have it. We have to have it. How many of you have kids? How many of you as parents had a kid come up to you and go, but I gotta have it. I gotta have it. My life will end as we know it if I don't have it. No. It's time we go back to a fiscal conservative office where we don't need helicopter programs or ways. Did you guys see the lady that they found alive that was missing from Cataldo? Earlier this week, there was a lady who was out with her family, and I believe she has, I may be misquoting this, but I believe there might possibly be some dementia. She went to go use the restroom while the family was fishing, and then she wound up lost. 20 minutes later, they didn't see her. They called Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, and Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and Search and Rescue gave up after 15 hours. They found her, I believe it was yesterday, but it was a couple days later, alive, thank God. But that family's not happy because the resources were not used to find their loved one. And we're being told with this helicopter program, which I'm absolutely against, it will be dead on arrival the day that I am sworn in as the 14th Sheriff of Kootenai County. That helicopter, we were told when they used $100,000 to equip it with forward-looking infrared, that this was going to be used for search and rescue, not surveilling people. It's going to be used for criminal investigation and felonious investigations, more specifically. And they have all these drones, they have all these other gadgets. We don't need the helicopter, and I would argue and say that this instance right here proves again why on the far east end of the county, with this $100,000 equipped forward-looking infrared, they couldn't even find one lady that was mobile and still alive.
Where did they find her?
I don't remember the exact spot where they found her.
In Kootenai County?
I believe it was, yes.
So don't we have cadaver dogs?
Oh, yeah.
All that is visible to find human beings that are
The argument was they couldn't find any trace of her and she vanished, so the assumption by Lieutenant Zach Sifford with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office claims that, well, they figured she got on I-90 and hitchhiked, and that's why they lost sight of her. Now, how many of you would pick up an elderly lady on the side of I-90 and not call law enforcement and say, hey, I picked somebody up, this doesn't look right, want to let you know. But for 15 hours is all they searched, and then they said, hey, we did everything by protocol, we're out of here. But I thought we had this helicopter that was free of charge. Nobody's charging us to use it. We just have to pay for the deputies that are on as attack officers. Another instance was Shoshone County, just to the east of us, had 2 injured ATV riders a week ago, probably closer to 2 weeks. Overturned their ATV, had some serious injuries, and could not hike out on their own. Shoshone County calls Two Bear Air, the helicopter out of Kalispell that we used to use before we got this new Razoo helicopter in the county. And they called MedStar. The Two Bear Air has hoist capabilities. The helicopter that we're using here in Kootenai County does not have hoist capabilities. And then they called the Spokane County Backwoods Patrol, which is their equivalent of search and rescue, to help over Shoshone. I thought we were told that everybody in this region was going to use Kootenai County's resources, and this is one of the arguments that was made when the helicopter program came to be in Kootenai County. But I do know that they used a helicopter on June 9th to harass a bunch of motorcyclists that were protesting the loud pipe ordinance that Coeur d'Alene enacted, $300 fine. Don and I were down by the lake at the boat launch there, just to the east side of the resort. Started seeing the helicopter buzz around. Tight circles over Tubbs Hill, a little bit out of the water, over off of Sherman and 2nd and 4th and that area, tighter and tighter and tighter. And then we said, we're getting annoyed with this. Walked out, saw a bunch of Kootenai County deputies inside Coeur d'Alene city limits all stacked up. Later on we found out that they were surveilling and stopping these motorcyclists that were going to cause a scene over the $300 fine. But Bob Norris said to the Board of County Commissioners, and we have the video, that he would never use a helicopter for any kind of traffic enforcement or for surveillance. You see this mission creep over and over again by this agency that wants to be bigger and larger than life. And instead of protecting our rights to life, liberty, and property, they're hell-bent to make an LA model, which is where Bob Norris came out of 30 years with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the most corrupt sheriff's office in the entire United States at one time. He served under both Sheriff Baca and under Sheriff Tanaka, who were indicted and went to federal prison. But this is the model that they're bringing up into Kootenai County. And again, I have zero problems with anybody from California or other states coming into Kootenai County. But as we talked about earlier, we do not want that culture from California right here in Kootenai County. We do not want the model of the I can't even talk about it, COPS program in Kootenai County.
What would you suggest I come back with when I talk to a resistant relative that is a North supporter? When they say, well, will the law enforcement men support Wilson when they're supporting North?
Great question. So the question is, will the deputies support Dan Wilson when they're already supporting Bob Norris? Okay, great question. So let's look at optics. Bob Norris is continually telling everybody, depending on which story, he has unanimous support of the Deputy Sheriff's Association, which is their equivalent of the employee union, or he's got 93%. Now the Deputy Sheriff's Association is open to all current Kootenai County deputies and retired deputies to be part of this organization. There is approximately 170 members, both current law enforcement, mostly jailers, and retirees. Not the entire 300 members of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, give or take, I'm rounding it up. Out of 170 voting members, 130 of those members voted to endorse Bob back in January. Now, I was a home-educated kid, so my math may be slightly off, but 130 from 175 or 140 does not make up 93%, and it definitely does not make up a majority or unanimous. So watch what's happening. The Deputy Sheriff's Association, the new one as we now know it, the Fraternal Order of Police, that pack got together, that association, when Bob ran in 2020, they reformed it. And there are individuals that are deputies, and I'm now calling them a deputy gang because that's my belief of what they are. And it's a pay-to-play scheme, the same thing that Bob Norris used and was used to in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, where the Deputy Sheriff's Association promote him. They use their 501c3 PAC, which received $10,000 from traffic court. Those were the flaggers that were on the side of road construction. Gave $10,000 to the PAC, and they used that PAC with Norris's permission to promote non-Kootenai County Republican Central Committee choices for county commissioner. They promoted Dale Gibney, Brett Surplus, or soundly rejected by the KCRCC. And then that PAC also endorsed North Idaho Republican PC challengers, and the result was a 40% loss of the conservative board to non-KCRCC approved or endorsed PCs. So the association is one of, they promote and go to Bob's events and help him with the logistics, and in turn, those executive board members have positions in his command staff. So they're captains and they're lieutenants. So he's paying, they're paying to promote him in favors, and he in turn gives them positions inside the sheriff's office. And the morale right now in the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is at an all-time low. I have my individuals inside the sheriff's office that know what's going on, and they're reporting everything. And the sheriff's office is comprised of those that are followers and will do whatever Bob tells them to do, and the rest that don't are kicked to the curb. I have had law enforcement officers throughout the region message me and meet with me one-on-one that said, if you are elected sheriff, we will quit and we will come to work for you in Kootenai County. Donna's with me when we've had these conversations. Because the men that work the lines that are truly there because it's a calling, not a career, and let's talk about this. We have changed in our culture to where we view law enforcement as you're a hero, you can do no wrong, we're going to elevate you up on a pedestal, you deserve, you deserve, you deserve, you deserve. Coming from somebody that put in 12 years to patrol myself at no cost, and actually at the cost of my business and my family, I did it because it's a calling, not because it's a career. It's no different than clergy, pastors, teachers, people that enter into a life of service do it primarily because it is them answering a calling. But we have allowed the rot of people hiring on to be cops today that are not cops because they want to serve the people, protect people's rights to life, liberty, and property, but they're doing it because it's a good paycheck. It's a career. We have a moral obligation to make certain that our deputies of service have a livable wage and take care of their families. But they shouldn't be getting rich. When I worked with Spokane PD, as a volunteer, I would listen to the chatter between all the officers. And in Spokane, this was over 10 plus years ago, there was only 8 police officers that did not make over $100,000 a year. Only 8. Now you say, well, I thought they only make, $60,000 a year. In the city of Spokane, which isn't the same with every jurisdiction, but I just want to use this as an example. You have all these events, overtime events. So in Spokane, if there's a Balloons Day, and you go to work Balloons Day, or you work Hoop Fest, or parades, or any special event, sometimes it can be the Temple Beth Shalom would hire officers every Friday night for 4 hours, but that's overtime dollars that you get for working out and above your typical position. So I want to make it explicitly clear that the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is going to have a re-education into a culture of calling and doing the right thing, and one of extreme ownership. Not just on, well, we live in this community, we like to chase bad guys and speed and, you know, do all the fun cop things that I love doing too, and make a buttload, a big pile of money. We want our people to be taken care of. That's a moral thing that the Bible requires. People that are worthy of their wage to be paid the wages that they're due. That's biblical. It doesn't mean that they have to get rich. Do you like it when your pastor drives out in a car that's $100,000 car? You kind of sit there and go, well, why is this pastor driving a car better than mine? I mean, there's a perception, right? So our cops are supposed to be amongst us. They're supposed to be our peers. Hope that helps.
And I got a question. We have friends in Hayden, and we keep on hearing this over the years that basically, if you want us to patrol Hayden, the city of Hayden needs to pay out more money. And I thought they all pay taxes. I don't quite get what's going on in Hayden, where they want more money. The city of Hayden, this has come before the mayor and the city council and everything.
Right.
They want more money that everybody's already paid taxes for police enforcement.
Right.
And I don't quite get what's going on there.
That one's a very complicated scenario, and there's not one quick answer. Some of the reasons why that is because per population paid in the density, and it's its own city, you have things like Walmart and other large box stores in there that have a traditionally higher calls for service, so more demand by law enforcement to respond to. I've been already working with some people from Hayden City Council to try to truly understand exactly what's going on by the books. So I don't have a position yet ready to make an absolute declaration as to what the problem is.
They pay taxes.
They do pay taxes, but as far as like from a call for service density of the population versus the amount of taxes paid per capita, will offset that a little bit as far as what the true numbers like. For those of us that live here in Athol, we're more spread out. The tax base versus the calls for service that happen in the county are far less than in like a city in the metro. And that's why you see Post Falls and you see Coeur d'Alene, they have their own additional taxes that they produce or that they request in order to promote their law enforcement for those communities. So until I get 100% of all the facts and can speak factually on it, I'm trying to reserve what my opinion is, but I am actively looking at it with a city council member, looking at the book, so. Jim?
I just have a comment, and that is that my personal opinion that before any federal agency comes in, like the FBI, they need to report to the chief law enforcement officer, the sheriff, the chief lawman, like say for instance in southern Idaho or Oregon. We already know the FBI's habits, but now they got these like CDC or FDA coming into these farmers and ranchers, and they're taking some tests, and we all know that the COVID-19, the PCR test they have creates a lot of false positives, and so they're going in there telling these farmers that they got to kill tens of thousands of chickens or thousands of milk cows, like two guys coming in from a federal organization. And I truly feel, this is my personal opinion, that they need to have a sheriff there and two independent veterinarians, local veterinarians, before you even think about putting any animal down, because that's the population. And I do know from prior military experience, there is things called mad cow disease, but that's a very limited thing.
I actually had a family member that was a geneticist that worked on that in livestock, so I'm pretty familiar with that. I think you bring up a valid solution, which is we're done listening to the feds come in and tell us that you can never refute what the feds say. So the states need to be putting themselves into gear by getting their own internal agencies to come out as a check and balance against what the feds are telling us. And before we're culling complete flocks, or what would you call the little chickens? Flock, okay. Before we cull our birds or our cattle, we need that verified. But again, we have allowed through federal funding at the state level for far too long the vices now that are crushing us at the local level. So, anybody else?
There were a group of 8 to 10 men standing in a group. They didn't speak English, they were speaking Spanish. They were off by themselves, like they didn't know what to do and where to go. And they had no luggage, they had nothing. My personal opinion, I truly believe they were waiting to be picked up, that they were illegal immigrants. And waiting. So I just want people to know that, yes, they're coming here. It is an invasion from our southern border, and it is even though that's Spokane Airport, it's here. So people need to wake up, because there will be some crime out of this continued invasion that will affect us. And that's why it's very important that we have a strong sheriff.
Thank you. Every state is a border state. Donna and I went down to the unsecured southern Arizona border back in January, and for 14 hours, we observed what was going on, and we have video. We found the NGO camp that had just sprung up right there out of Sassafras. It's about 10 miles east on the way to Nogales. And at this encampment, there were hundreds, collectively after the full visit, hundreds of military-aged males from Africa and the Middle East that were on U.S. soil at these camps, completely unaccompanied or being challenged by the Border Patrol or U.S. military or local law enforcement. We know that they are transporting, the cartels are the ones doing the transporting in conjunction with NGOs, non-governmental organizations, that the federal government has funded well over $1.5 billion to transport them through. So in Spokane, it would be my guess, once they have shipped them from Arizona into Spokane to distribute them via overland, paying $1,000 a head to individuals the cartels are paying to transport folks. Don't overlook that it is already substantiated that Catholic Charities has been assisting moving people around this country. Lutheran services, Lutheran charities, Jewish charities. We are facing an absolute invasion that's facilitated, promoted, funded by the United States government in violation of Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, that requires the federal government. Remember, why did we get together to form a union? One of the biggest things is national security. We have a federal government that is purposely allowing this invasion, and I do not believe it's because of the votes. While that can be part of the problem, they want to completely destroy this country from within, and they're very close to succeeding. So, don't think for a minute that we don't live in a border state just because geographically we're not there.
They're already here. They're here by numbers.
Yeah.
And I've seen them last year, I've seen them up north. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Blue Heron is. It's a truck stop on the way to Naples with a friend helping build on his property. We stopped there to get some food. There were like 14 of us sitting on the curb, all talking Spanish to one another, all wearing backpacks. I know that deal. They're all talking Spanish, right? Where are they going? This was just before winter, too. You know, where they going?
I'm tired.
And that same year, Greyhound Park, gun shop. A friend of mine always has a table there. I was over at his stand, we were talking story. 4 guys come up, looking at his stuff. They want to know how much it costs. gun was worth about $150, he called it $1,000. Right? He looked over at his friends and he said something to them in Spanish. And then they said something back to him in Spanish. And he turned around and walked away. So they're here trying to buy guns at the gun shows. You know?
Yeah.
Anybody can buy a gun at a gun show, which is cool. This is a carry state. You know, you can't deprive anybody of buying anywhere. Right? If you pass the criteria at a gun store, but at a gun shop, I mean at a gun show, you don't need any of that criteria. You're buying from personal owners that are selling stuff that you don't want anymore. And but he knew right off, these guys are not legals, man. I ain't selling no guns, you know. And he just bolted the price of that, and when they left, I thought that's what they got really worth. $50. The shotgun they spray painted black to make it look nice, right? You know, I'm gonna sell those guys anything.
It's good. It's being vigilant. You know, we're being told.
You don't want to just put a gun in anybody's hand, especially if they're legals, man. They're all here. We're gonna have to deal with it at some point.
Well, I like what President Trump had to say on the Tim Pool podcast, where he called for a mass deportation, where he uses local law enforcement to help him accomplish that. And I've already committed that I will deputize key men and women that have experience in law enforcement or military, so we can humanely do this safely. But I'll provide whatever resources that we can to help President Trump administration to gather them and to take them out of this region. So we're being told over and over again we're being gaslit. Well, what you see is just seasonal workers. And we have, look, the numbers you hear CNN, they'll say 8 million. The real numbers are close to at least 20 million since 2021. When you are out in public and you see people that it doesn't look right, instead of being excoriated because you're just being paranoid and they're seasonal workers, no. We have already seen what has been happening, and we know in our hearts what's happening. And it's up to them to prove that they're here illegally, not us to prove that they're here illegally. Take the rules and apply the same thing that they're doing to us back to them. Quit playing by the same rules. It's getting us defeated at every level. It's almost like having to, as a woman, compete with a transgender male in a swimming competition, right? They're going to win hands down when they're cheating. Or, what they call cheating. Well, before I wrap things up, any other questions or comments I can answer?
I just want to say the last two comments are absolutely straightforward, because the Biden administration got caught because people did surveillance video on them, and what they copped out to is that they contract flights to come from Latin America and bring people straight into the cities here and all over the country, and they're also using some military units to do transportation as well when they get here, and that's actually trafficking. So it's a proven fact by so many different sources that is a true statement.
I'll give you a statement, and this is based upon what you were speaking about earlier. I had 22 years in Los Angeles County Probation Department. My dad had 45 years as an LA County Sheriff. So I go way back. I mean, to the point where my dad was bringing over the sheriffs themselves for dinner, Sherman Block and Lubbock. All I wanted to do was retire happily and morally. And I've told Dan the story many times. A couple of years ago, I found out that 4 Mexican mafia captains were living in Kootenai. They set up the fentanyl pipeline and the human trafficking pipeline. This is why I come out to support him, because I know what road he is going down. And if people don't get involved and convinced, then the LA politics are going to get worse up here. I was involved in those LA politics because it was part of my job down there. My dad was a political animal. He was involved in it too down there. Deputy Sheriff Zelle for cigar nights to raise morale.
Yeah.
Because him and I worked at the same LAPD station when I was a gang officer. So you can tell they're family relatives, you know. Norris, I sat looking at Norris yesterday at Elmer's restaurant, listening to Bruce Batari. And right now, I believe it's costing the sheriff's department $15,000 a month to keep the lights on for the old Kootenai County electric building.
Yeah.
That's part of their budget. You know, and they want $15 million for a jail renovation. What we would do in Los Angeles to put people, nonviolent citizens, back out on the street, GPS. You know where they're at. Now, if they take that off, then they're going to move back in. But it doesn't seem that they're using any of those tactics up here. They want to grow bigger.
Yeah.
And
Another retirement here.
and even Bruce Batari said yesterday, because Idaho is not decentralized, it makes it harder for them because they want to grow. They want to grow government. So all I ask is, you know what? Get out, talk to these politicians, get to know them. You know, as much as I don't like them, I had a friend of mine tell me, get to know Bruce Batari. You know, keep your enemies close.
Yeah.
And get to know what these politicians are all about, because if Norris and Batari aren't stopped, guess what the next step is going to be? And I've already put it out there to Dan and other people. You're going to see Bruce Batari run for governor. So, do you want that form of government or not? You are the ones voting on it. So
We have to remember that Bruce Batari came here not that long ago, and he was from Washington, D.C. How did he and Bob Morris, who worked many, many years under the Homeland Security Division of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office under JREC, Joint Regional Intelligence Center, where he bragged, and if you go to the sheriff's page, Kootenai County Sheriff's Office page under Bob's bio and on Bob Morris's re-election site, he brags about being in control of assets through the FBI and the CIA. He trained with Mossad, he trained with a lot of big intelligence agencies, and he's very, very comfortable with federal law enforcement. In fact, they used the Kootenai County Regional Area Support donated helicopter in March of this year for surveillance that the FBI requested down in Clearwater County, 2 counties southwest. Do you want a sheriff that understands the delineation, that demarcation line between the federal government and local? I'm the only candidate right now that cannot brag and say, and I'm glad that I was trained by the FBI. I have no alliances, allegiance, familiarity with federal law enforcement. In order to protect everybody's rights in Kootenai County to life, liberty, and property, which I would argue and say that Kootenai County can become, if not the most, in fact, I'm going to say the most conservative county in the entire country, based on the principles of the founders, that life, liberty, and property, that we band together in these times that are in front of us. If we develop extreme courage, band together for the greater cause, we can secure this county despite what's coming on the horizon. Men and women of liberty see what's on the horizon and they act accordingly. 15 days to stop the spread should have never happened. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the Bill of Rights is suspended because of an emergency. An emergency by dictators, not only at a federal level, but a state and even more intimately at a local county level. And I would argue and say that tyrannical bureaucrats at the local level were worse anything at the federal level. So men, sons and daughters of liberty, see the danger on the horizon, prepare yourself accordingly, and don't wait for it to be upon your doorstep before you figure out what you're going to do. If you elect me as sheriff, I'm going to be standing shoulder to shoulder with you all to get this county ready to secure our borders, to prepare ourselves against any man-made or natural event by bringing the community together, to bring the militias together so that we maintain the rule of law. You do not want militias deciding what due process is in an emergency or any kind of disaster. I've never been a part of a militia myself. I don't have anything against militias, but if you want to maintain the way of life that we have become accustomed to in this country, you have to maintain the rule of law. And in the United States of America, the same at the county level, we adhere to the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights, where everybody gets equal protection under the law and everybody is afforded their due process. The sheriff is the only one that can bring the community together to formulate and execute a plan to maintain the rule of law in any kind of natural or man-made disaster. And I think that most of us can look at that horizon and see we have a lot of dangers heading our way. If you are at all curious, I would advise you to look up the term fifth generation warfare. It's very important to understand what fifth generation warfare is, because I believe that we're in that right now, which is what?
Well, General Flynn wrote a book about that, little handbooks.
Yeah.
Questions and answers in there, so that can explain it very simply.
Yeah, great resource. But if you understand that we're being hit with all sorts of things that don't make sense, you still have to maintain your courage through it. You cannot be fearful. Keep doing what you're doing. Be prepared. Get to know your neighbors. Be strong mentally. Be strong physically. Be strong socially, spiritually. Because we did not descend from fearful men, but we descended from men who understood the times. They acted accordingly. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And 250 years later, we find ourselves in very, very similar circumstances. And if you read the Declaration of Independence and you read all the charges that were listed out, substitute Britain or the King of England with Department of Homeland Security, FBI, DOJ, and tell me how many of those same abuses that were being alleged by our founders are happening today. Nothing new under the sun. So, are you going to be strong and courageous? Are you going to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work? Or are you going to allow a certain tyranny that would take our very lives if given the opportunity? Inside the room down in my basement where I do a lot of my studying, I have a picture of the founders. It's a painting of the founders signing the Declaration of Independence. And Don and I are down in this room quite often, and we have discussions. And how many times have I looked up at that painting and I say, am I worthy to be in those men's presence? Because of the things that I'm doing right now to do my part. Nothing spectacular. We don't have kings in this country. We're not subservient to anybody. We are equal under God. We have the rights to life, liberty, and property. The laws of nature and nature's God have spelled this out. Will you do your best with your lives and your fortunes and your sacred honor to be in a group like those men that did everything to give us this great life that we have, this great government? And I ask you to join with me. Spread the message. Spread what Dan Wilson is about. Life, liberty, property, securing the county, preparing for what's up ahead. And we will not be silenced. We will not be cowards. We will lead this country. We will be that shining city on a hill for all other counties around this country to see what a united people can accomplish and be together. And I ask for your support. Please go to my website, theidahosheriff.com. If you can, please give. If you monetarily, if you can give, being a volunteer, hosting an event, helping with a fundraiser, sign waving. We have so many events that we have between now and November, and I need your help. I need you guys to help me spread the message of liberty without compromise. You see these on our shirts. That is the message. Liberty without compromise. I'd love for you to join our team. So God bless you all. Stay of strong courage, and may God bless Kootenai County and the United States. Thank you.